So Tom Bauer has apparently seen page 14 of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's prenup, and he says there's a clause in there that Harry signed without fully understanding what it meant. Now, before we even get into whether that's true or not, the fact that this claim exists is kind of a while, because it would explain so much. Like, if you buy and watching the last few years and thinking some of these business decisions, they make sense. This is the thing that might actually connect them, and Bowers isn't just some random person speculating online. He's the guy who wrote the book on Meghan Markle, literally, and his whole reputation is built on digging up things that powerful people really don't watch. What dug up? Also, real quick before we go further, if you enjoy breaking down royal drama like this, hit subscribe and join us here at Crown Watch. We'd love to have you. So why does Tom Bauer's opinion carry so much weight? It's his track record. He's not a celebrity gossip writer, is a former barrister and investigative journalist who has spent decades going after some of the most protect the public figures in the world. Richard Branson, Tony Blair, Robert Maxwell, Simon Cowell. None of those people have successfully sued him, and that detail matters because publishing companies aren't stupid. They're not going to publish claims that aren't legally vetted and risk ending up in court. So when Bauer publishes something, it's because it's been through that process. He said himself that he doesn't write about people he likes. He writes about people whose lives are shrouded in mystery, people who want to hide their secrets, and he just keeps digging until he finds what they don't want us to know. When Meghan Markle came onto the scene, he thought it was fascinating and started looking into how this was all about a play out. He's also said he spoke to very few of her friends because she put what he described as a fat wall on anyone talking to him. He sent dozens and dozens of emails to her friends, and most of them didn't even reply. So he went around them and found other people, former colleagues, people with first-hand knowledge of the front stages of her career. His reporting relies on interviews, documents, records, and extensive research. That's why when he makes a claim, it gets attention. But here's where we have to be really careful. There's a difference between what Tom Bauer has published and when he speculated about in interviews. He's publicly discussed his views on Harry and Meghan Markle finances and legal arrangements, but there is no public evidence confirming that he has personally examined their prenuptial agreement, reviewed specific clauses within it, or verified its contents through lawyers who were involved in drafting it. That part is important to keep in mind as we go through all this. What Bauer's arguing is that the legal and financial structure surrounding Harry and Meghan workers' business interests could become critically important if their marriage were ever to end, and according to him, that's where the story takes a dramatic turn. Most prenuptial agreements are fairly simple. They outline the assets each person brings into the marriage, explain how property would be divided if the couple separates, and often include provisions for spousal support or financial protections. Royal marriages are much more complex because they involve royal titles, public duties, and assets connected to the crown. The details of royal prenuptial agreements are private, but we do know how royal or settlements have historically addressed issues like titles, financial arrangements, and official status. For example, after her divorce from King Charles, Diana retained the title Diana, Princess of Wales, but no longer held the style of Her Royal Highness, so the separations involved for more than an ordinary private agreement. Harry and Meghan Markle are Jewish. She is also shaped by California law, where community property rules can affect assets and income earned during a marriage. That means earnings from ventures launched while they were married, such as media deals or joint business projects, could become relevant in the event of a divorce depending on the circumstances and any agreements between the couple. Tom Bauer has argued that these legal and financial issues could become especially significant if the marriage were ever to end, but again, there is no publicly verified evidence that Harry and Meghan Markle's prenuptial agreement contains specific clauses governing their Netflix earnings, intellectual property rights, the Sussex brand, or Harry's memoirs spare the actual terms of any such agreement have never been made public. And that's kind of the whole thing with this story. We're dealing with a lot of interpretation built on a foundation of facts, but the most explosive claims haven't been independently confirmed. That said, Bauer's broader argument is that Meghan Markle has played a leader role in many of their joint business ventures and has been publicly associated with major commercial projects undertaken by the couple. Under California law, the ownership and division of income from those ventures would depend on a range of legal factors, including any agreements the couple may have in place. Tom Bauer has argued that these national arrangements could ultimately benefit Meghan Markle if the marriage were ever to end. However, there is no publicly verified evidence that she has a primary legal claim to all of their shared revenue streams, nor is there verified evidence that Harry and Meghan Markle amended a prenuptial agreement after their 28th wedding, or that Harry signs an amendment without fully reviewing it. Those claims have not been independently confirmed. What we do know is that prenuptial agreements can be amended after marriage, and that's not unusual. Couples sometimes update them following major life changes like having children, purchasing significant assets, relocating, or launching new businesses together. Whether Harry and Meghan Markle ever amended a prenuptial agreement has never been publicly confirmed. Tom Bauer has suggested that their financial arrangements evolved as their circumstances changed following their departure from royal duties in 2020 when they moved to California and same major commercial deals, but there's no publicly verified evidence that they executed a prenuptial amendment at that time. And this is where the narrative starts to get a little tangled, because you have Bauer making these claims, and then you have all these other reports circulating about the state of the marriage, reports about them sleeping in separate beds about Meghan Markle allegedly looking up divorce law. Lawyers about Harry spending time in hotels as at Escape Radar online published claims that Meghan Markle is cracking under the pressure of public scrutiny and wondering if she would be better off as a solo act, but those reports are coming from unnamed insiders and none of it has been confirmed. What's interesting is how Bauer connects all of this to Meghan Markle's spree. Views divorce from Trevor angles, and when that divorce happened, very little about the legal negotiations became public and many details remain private. Tom Bauer argues that her earlier experiences influenced how she approached business, legal, and media decisions after marrying Harry. People who have worked with Meghan Markle have described her as detail-oriented when it comes to contracts and major business decisions. Tom Bauer argues that those experiences influenced how she approached future commercial ventures after marrying Harry. However, there was no publicly verified evidence that her previous divorce directly shaped any legal arrangements in her marriage to Harry. What is publicly known is that Harry and Meghan Markle signed major commercial deals with Netflix and Spotify after stepping back from royal duties, marking the beginning of their post-will business strategy. Archewell, their foundation and business organization, was established around the same period. Tom Bauer argues that their financial and business arrangements became increasingly important as his projects expanded, but again, there is no publicly verified evidence that Harry and Meghan Markle amended a prenuptial agreement during this period, or that such an agreement granted Meghan Markle control over their joint brand. Public records do show no Meghan Markle serving in leadership roles within Archewell, but they do not establish ownership rights in the event of a separation, and this is where the financial picture starts to look a little dicey. Regardless of whether the printer claims are true, the Netflix agreement was widely reported as being worth up to $100 million, but industry reporting has consistently noted that this represented the maximum potential value of the contract rather than an upfront payment. The final amount depended on completed productions and contractual milestones. Harry and Meghan Markle released their documentary series, and Meghan Markle lifestyle programming moved forward, but other announced projects, including the animated series Pearl, were cancelled before production, meaning several elements of the original partnership never came to fruition. Tom Bauer argues that their Netflix partnership ultimately generated far less than the headline figures reported when the deal was first announced. The exact amount they received has never been publicly confirmed, but he believes their business strategy shifted as several planned projects failed to move forward. Around that same time, Meghan Markle began developing her own lifestyle brand, now known as Ever. Public trademark filings reflected that effort. She also created business entities connected to her personal ventures outside of Watchwill. Tom Bauer argues that these moves point to a broader financial strategy, but there is no publicly verified evidence that they were part of preparations for a divorce or an asset protection plan. Public records likewise do not confirm claims about separate investment accounts or legal restructuring for that purpose. Bauer says these elements show Meghan Markle strengthening her independent commercial position, although those conclusions remain as interpretation rather than independently verified fact. But when you look at the timeline, it's hard not to notice the pattern. Meghan Markle has increasingly pursued business projects under her own name. Her partnership with Live The Media was announced as a solo venture. The Bench was published as her own project. Tom Bauer argues that 2022 marked a significant shift, with Meghan Markle placing greater emphasis on building an independent commercial identity, while Harry and Meghan Markle continue to work together in selected ventures. She was clearly building something separate. Bauer believes this reflects a broader long-term strategy, although there is no publicly verified evidence that these business decisions were connected to preparations for a divorce or to any private legal agreement between the couple. Now, there's another layer to this that makes the whole thing even more complicated. Tom Bauer has also highlighted Meghan Markle's relationship with Sunshine Sachs, the public relations firm that represented her during part of her time as a working royal. Sunshine Sachs has represented many high-profile celebrities over the years, including clients involved in major public controversies and high-profile separations. Harry and Meghan Markle later ended their relationship with the firm as they built their own communications operation through Watchwell. That then reportedly Meghan Markle brought Sunshine Sachs back, and that detail raised a lot of questions, because if you're bringing back the PR firm that represented you during your previous public reinvention, people are going to wonder why. However, there is no publicly verified evidence that changes in PR representation or connected to preparations for a divorce, or that any such strategy existed. Tom Bauer argues that Meghan Markle's growing focus on our own business ventures reflects a broader effort to build an independent commercial identity. Those conclusions remain as interpretation, and honestly, the fact that the couple hasn't directly addressed a lot of this as part of it keeps swirling. There was that report in Vanity Fair about someone allegedly acting in Meghan Markle's behalf, having a conversation with a publishing house to gauge interest in a book about a post-divorce scenario. The article said that the unidentified person made it clear the couple were not getting divorced, but we're seeking to know if such a divorce did happen, would the publisher theoretically be interested in a book that took place and its aftermath. Nothing was ever put on paper, no offer was made, no manuscript was produced. do so, but that claim went unchallenged by the notoriously would suggest just success, which strikes a lot of people as suspicious. If it wasn't true, why not deny it? The silence around that specific report has only fueled more speculation, because this is a couple that has never been shy about pushing back against stories they consider inaccurate. Their willingness to let that particular detail sit out there without a denial is something that even their critics find genuinely puzzling. Tom Bauer has also speculated about the future of Harry and Meghan Markle marriage, offering his own predictions about how events could unfold. Those predictions remain his personal assessment and have not been so reported but publicly available evidence. While California law sets residency and waiting period requirements for divorce proceedings, there is no verified indication that either Harry or Meghan Markle has begun or intends to begin divorce proceedings. Meghan Markle has publicly established California as the base for her personal and business activities for several years. Tom Bauer argues that if they were ever to divorce, California law and any private agreements between them would likely shape how their finances and business interests are handled, but there is no publicly verified evidence that their prenuptial agreement contains clauses governing title usage, ownership of Watchwell, intellectual property rights, or Harry's ability to profit from future projects, nor is there verified evidence that Harry signed a later amendment without fully understanding its contents. Questions involving their Montecito home, shared assets, or business ventures would ultimately depend on California law, and the specific terms of any private agreements, none of which have been made public. Child custody would also be determined by a California court based on the best interests of the children rather than automatically favoring either parent. Tom Bauer has offered his own interpretation of how such issues might be resolved, but those conclusions remain speculative and have not been independently verified. What Bauer keeps coming back to is the idea that Harry may not fully understand the legal and financial consequences of a possible separation. He points to Harry's emotional appearances during his legal battles in London as signs of the pressure he's been under, though there is no independent evidence linking those moments to the state of his marriage. Tom Bauer argues that Harry appears to be under growing personal and legal pressure, but there's no publicly verified evidence linking that to the state of his marriage. He also suggests Harry may not fully understand the financial consequences of his legal battles, though that remains Bauer's interpretation. There is a recurring theme in Bauer's analysis that Harry has consistently been outmaneuvered in situations requiring detailed contractual knowledge, and that his tendency to trust people and rely on emotional judgment rather than careful legal review has put him in a vulnerable position that he may not even recognize yet. And look, if you zoom out and look at the whole picture, Bauer is essentially make a case that the financial arrangements around this marriage have been structured a way that could become highly significant if things ever fall apart. He's pointed to Meghan Markle's previous legal experience, her detail-oriented approach, the contracts, the timing of various business moves, and the shift toward independent commercial ventures. But the most explosive claims, the specific prenuptial clauses, the alleged amendments, the claim that Harry signed something without understanding it, none of that has been independently verified. There is no publicly available evidence confirming any of it. What we're left with as a situation where a highly respected investigative journalist with a track record of uncovering uncomfortable truths is making serious claims about the legal and financial architecture of one of the most famous marriages in the world, but the evidence that would prove those claims, the actual documents, the specific clauses, the refined amendments, remains private. Bauer believes Harry has made decisions whose long-term consequences he may only now beginning to understand. That remains his assessment rather than independently verified fact. And honestly, whether you think Tom Bauer's uncovering the real story or connecting dots that aren't there probably depends on how you already feel about Harry and Meghan Markle. But the questions he's raising about the financial structure of their partnership are valid questions, even have the answers on publicly available. The fact that so much of this remains unverified doesn't mean it's false, it just means we can't confirm it. And in a story where the central claim